All right, we're good. Awesome. All right. Thanks, everyone. My name is Nick Van Weerdenburg. I'm the founder of Wrangle.io. We are a JavaScript shop, and about a third of our business is mobile. So we do a lot of Cordova, a lot of Ionic work. And we've been working in a continuous delivery environment pretty much since our founding, and we've done a lot of work in the mobile space. And some of the things that we've learned have, it's been quite a journey. So this talk is meant to share some of those, and really about fixing continuous delivery for mobile. First, I'll talk a couple minutes about what is continuous delivery, just so we're on the same page. Different people have different definitions. There's continuous integration, there's continuous delivery, and there's continuous deployment. Continuous integration, you want to build multiple times per day and after every merge. But building, what does that mean? If it's not tested and it's not working, that's a very, very simple sort of test of something being partially done. You add unit tests, linting, beautification, you link together with tools such as Gulp, and you go through getting a lot of it done, but it's not completely done. And we like CircleCI for most of our projects. And why do you do this? To keep master clean and working. So you have this feedback and sort of keeping everyone honest. Then you can take this a little bit further because you're in a really good state. Your code's mostly working. You want to produce something of value at frequent intervals. You keep master deployable, so you're sort of ready to deliver. But then you can also go to continuous deployment, where you're actually going to deploy something. And this can be tricky on the back end. It's generally easy for the front end, but that excludes mobile apps. So we want to do continuous deployment. This is why we do it. We found that continuous deployment is strongly aligned with Agile. When our teams had struggles with Agile, when we moved to continuous deployment, they were well aligned and they gave us feedback on what the issues were. And a lot of the benefits are the same. Like Agile, it helps you build what's actually needed. You're talking about working software. You're focusing on what's next. You ruthlessly prioritize. You avoid work in progress. You save money. You realize ROI and learning early. You deliver 80% of the value with 20% of the effort if you take one of the Scrum sort of maxims. But this is hard to do. And if you're pressured and if you can't have access to the software and you're not testing it, you're not getting feedback, what often happens is you think you're Agile, but nobody's actually touching the software. Nobody's actually finishing the software. You're not getting any feedback. It's just not really getting you the value that you need. You want to deliver early for value and learning. You have the classic Scrum, which is tangible value. You have the classic Lean Startup, which is you lean towards learning. Actually understanding why you're doing something and prioritizing is important. And you can move back and forth between those two, depending on what your business needs are. But now it's like, how do you achieve this? And probably most people here have gone through this. You have good user stories and feature slicing. You limit your work in progress. You reduce cycle time. One thing though, buggy software is work in progress. Deferred bug fixing costs more. And again, deferred bug fixing costs more. So most of our really profound learnings about Agile and continuous delivery have come in the mobile space because of the extra friction, especially with Cordova apps. When you have a lot of people working with CSS, and sometimes when you start building Cordova apps, you often don't put enough love into the CSS, and then you start running into some design challenges, and that sort of interferes with the delivering of features and keeping your software working. So to make this work, and this is all going somewhere, leaving testing to testers is often very problematic because they get to it too late. And if you're trying to do continuous delivery or continuous deployment, everything gets stacked up waiting for testing. Testing gets done quickly. There's issues with the PRs that follow the initial PRs, the pull requests. You end up with a mini waterfall inside an iteration. What we do is we aim for continuous delivery where every merge is deployable. And so how do you approach testing in that manner? Short answer, testing is everyone's job. Now this raises really interesting questions when you start thinking about what hot push means and trying to get software delivered to end users. Using something like Hockey App or any of these tools for delivering versions of a mobile app are great generally if you're pushing at the end of a build to an end user. But when you get into the actual building and working on the software, you really have to think about this and solve this throughout the entire development lifecycle. This really raises the urgency for deploying your software. This is what we generally follow at Wrangle. It's similar to GitHub Flow. What you'll notice, though, is that a lot of stuff happens during pull requests. It goes through unit testing, continuous integration, there's failures. When issues happen, it goes back to the developer. When things pass, it goes to testing. The tester will go work through the issues, go back to development, maybe design will get involved. This is all happening on multiple pull requests in a larger team, so you have lots and lots of moving parts. And so what's essential is to get through pull requests as fast as possible, because even a delay of an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours a day starts causing massive repercussions on your ability to continuously deliver software. And then that impacts how well you can address quality and have complete working software at all times. Typically, the best way to measure if your continuous delivery process or your agile process is working is cycle time and work in progress. If it's taking you 7 days to complete features and you have multiple developers working on features at the same time, you're going to run into a lot of overlap. If you have 3 developers and you have 9 stories open, you have a big issue. You have a lot of work in progress. You're nowhere near continuous delivery. They're switching context all the time. They're thinking about multiple things. There's a lot of waste in the process. If these are high, debug the process. And that's where we've gone through and really tried to solve for continuous delivery with mobile, because it was broken. And our mobile projects had the highest cycle time and the highest work in progress of all our applications, even if they were simpler applications. So some of the issues that arise is the handoffs that are going on during the work. If you have a sort of a product owner or a user giving you some feedback or some initial requirements, you go through design, you go through development, you go through testing, there's often back and forths. And then you have multiple developers working on multiple features, there'll be conflicts. Handoffs drive a lot of rework. If testing finds something and you have to go back to design and development, then it gets held up and your pull request starts to age. So getting the testing done quickly, and this is where it's not just the tester's job. If we can have all the developers working on testing as well and they can do it easily, then this will push things through. In the life of a pull request, testing is one of the biggest lags. Design too, often due to regressions found during development. Access to running code on the device is essential. And the cost of fixing bugs is quite high. Most people learn pretty quickly that you need to run on devices. Like some of the things that come up running on different devices are quite awe-inspiring. We had one application that was running wonderfully on every device, and then we deployed it to a Note 2, and it turned into Picasso. Like the whole application scrambled itself and reordered itself in the screen, and we couldn't figure out why for a while. This was on an older version of Android. We didn't have good debugging tools. It turned out to be a memory issue. And the memory issue was just blowing up the DOM and scattering things. It was pretty awe-inspiring. But the impact of PR stacking is massive. You don't want your pull request to live long. To me, that's the biggest sort of metric of dysfunction in a project that's trying to do continuous delivery, long-lived pull requests. And that ends up being reflected in high work in progress and high cycle time. So the solution, on your team, the designer works with the team, so there's no sort of lag there. We're not going through a waterfall approach, a mini waterfall. Pair designing works as well as pair programming when friction occurs. So this is where I found the most sort of interesting reflections of Agile principles, where when friction occurred with different teams, they all had different sort of skill sets, and they had to solve for that team. Some developers are really good with CSS. When they're not, they have a designer. If that designer doesn't work well with the developers, then you start having some friction and things start to sort of slip a bit. So pair designing works really well in that situation, just like pair programming in some circumstances where you have developers who can't get on the same page for architecture. There's an interesting project from maybe a year and a half ago where the pull requests ended up being these little war zones with all this arguing. And the real solution was, why were people coding things without discussing it first? They're all sitting next to each other. They would code their solution, and they'd do a pull request, and they would have these massive fights in the pull request, and they're sitting right beside each other. And I talked to one of the guys on the team, and it's like, well, why don't you just talk about things before you build it? And it takes you 5 minutes. Instead, you guys have just blown away 3 days, and now you're talking about refactoring because you've all gone off in a different direction. So relentlessly measure work in progress, cycle time, and fix issues. Expect the team to need time to ramp up, generally. Your work in progress and cycle time will be higher. Each team is unique. Automate everything and understand the value of why this process works. And teams really do have to believe it. And with a good Scrum Master, they get believing it, and then they start to actually work together to remove issues. Now the fun part, solutions in the continuous deployment pipeline. Pull requests need to be closed in under a certain amount of hours, and this will depend on your project. It really depends when you feel friction or pain. If your work in progress is going up, it usually means pull requests aren't being closed. This results in more development against slightly different code bases, more regressions, and so minutes count a lot. And that's sort of the point of going through this. But builds take time, deploys take time, testers can't be immediately available. This has a massive impact on flow, leading to bigger PRs, longer PRs, more regressions, more testing. It sort of, everything starts to just devolve. So our solution for this is now Microsoft CodePush, CircleCI, Heroku-style pull request deploys, deploy different PRs as needed, that's essential, which enables hot push across the development lifecycle so that you can pull up any pull request. If you're a tester, if you're a developer, as a developer, you want to pick your pull request and test it on the device because you just implemented that feature. You'll see the issue immediately. It's going to take you approximately 3 minutes for a small enough feature to run it through a couple of devices and just save the intense burden of having to go through testing and come back a few days later and you have to rethink about the issues. There's a lot of them. I mean, this came up, I guess, in the last PhoneGap day. There was a demonstration, and there's a lot of talk about these. There's a ton of them out there. We even wrote our own because we didn't really realize there was other ones being developed, which was sort of sad because we wrote it. It was just too much. But we wanted hot push across the dev lifecycle, so we had something in ours that we liked, Cordwood. And that was CircleCI hooks, per PR hot push, client-side UI to pick PRs, deploy once, and presto. On-demand device config for testing across the device lifecycle. You can easily tie this to users. You can even set up the front end to do tests. So you can have a portion of your testing user base get a new feature and get feedback without having to push it across all of your testers, your users. But Cordwood's dead. I'll tell you a little more about that. But it's worth showing. This is how we would work with it. We have this running in a few projects still. You can pick PRs. And as you go through an app, you can pick from a list of the commits that you want to work on. But we killed it because there were so many of these features, and some of them were better than ours in some areas. So what we did instead, we looked at the ones that were out there, and our goal is one that worked across all our JavaScript mobile projects. So whether it was Cordova, Ionic, or some other frameworks. So we ended up going with CodePush. We don't actually do a lot. You can go check out CodePush if you haven't. It's pretty cool. It's on GitHub. It handles the push very well. Had no solution for pull per PR pushes. So we use CircleCI, some Node scripts, and some API debugging to solve this. And we have that in a GitHub repo, which is a CodePush demo. So we've essentially replaced Cordwood with a CodePush demo. We're still working on that, so we don't have the ability to pick pull requests. But what it looks like, you check for update, it gets synced down, it gets deployed. And you have your update installed. I also put in the screenshots in case the animation didn't work. Sync it, you get the download, and you have it updated. And then that's sort of it. So in the next step, we're going to take the ability to do, picking the pull requests and integrate that, and then we'll have our solution for hot push across the development lifecycle. That gets to that last step where it's on the device, and you can test the app properly, quickly. I haven't looked at TestMonk. I saw that demonstration earlier. That looks really awesome. I hope to look at that in our process as well. So again, CodePush and our CodePush demo, which focuses on that per pull request continuous deployments. So thank you. I tried to pick up the pace a little bit because I know I started a few minutes later. So any questions? No, question.